having a conversation with a guy one time, and he was a big guy, a really big guy. And as we talked about his story, it was actually quite fascinating. One of the things that he told me from his story was he remembered an event laying face down in the grass. He could feel the blood and the sweat running from his face, and the wet grass was in his face, and he was crushed underneath a pile of bodies. He said, I remember thinking, this is the moment when we will know whether we go on to the Super Bowl or we don't. And I can't do any more from right here than I've already done. I have played as hard as I could. I have pushed as hard as I could. I've given everything I have. But there's also one more thing that has to happen for us to go to the Super Bowl, and I can do nothing about it. All I can do is wait to see if we as a team have done enough. And the one more thing will only be evident as I either hear the size of the crowd, the disappointment, the failure, the upset, or I hear the ecstatic cheers and screams. Mike Kiselek was the center for the Dallas Cowboys. Emmitt Smith was the running back in a playoff game to take them to the Super Bowl or not. And after a decent career as a center in the NFL, having played for the Cowboys and a couple of other teams, Mike and I were talking about the different people who played in the NFL and how good they were and what they brought to the field. And he made a statement that really, well, it set me on my heels for a minute because I really had to ask him to explain. Only in public speaking have I ever competed, well, I take that back. Public speaking and billiards are the only two I've ever competed in anything at the highest level. In both of those, I've competed in the World Championship. And doesn't mean I won the World Championship, but I competed at the highest level. Finished in the semifinals in public speaking. I finished at 756 out of 1,800 in billiards. But the idea of reaching the NFL, in playing that game they call the Super Bowl, and playing all the way up to the Super Bowl, you have a great level of expectation on your performance, on your ability, on your talent, on your skill, on your discipline. But what he said to me was, there are a lot of guys that reach the NFL in their first year, and the worst insult they could receive is, wow, he's got a lot of potential. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. If you're playing in the NFL, you're pretty good. If you made it past high school and into college and into the big leagues, that's pretty impressive. He said, it is impressive. I said, well, then why would you say that someone who has potential in the NFL, that's an insult? He said, well, because if you reach the NFL and you haven't discovered how to maximize your potential, that means you still have room left. You still have room to grow. You have discipline you can add. You have possibilities to do more, which means you haven't yet given it your all. If you reach the highest level, if you reach the maximum possibility, and you still have potential left, it's going to be wasted. And I thought, that's such a counterintuitive thing for me. I mean, I can see that there's a lot of truth in it. But potential may be for an NFL player in their speed, in their height, in their agility, in their ability to catch a ball or kick a ball or throw a ball, in their ability to maneuver and outrun other people. But just because they have potential in those areas doesn't mean they have a promise of success in the NFL. Today, I want to talk about the idea that many of us have potential in a lot of different areas in our life, and yet we do nothing with it. We have potential to do incredible things And it's almost as if we're waiting to cash in our potential check for a real payday. See, potential is inert, meaning without any activity, without any action behind it, without the patience and the purpose and the perseverance and the process, potential is nothing. I mean, it's possible, but it's like dynamite in the storage grounds. If there's no fuse, if there's no application, dynamite exploding in a vacuum is absolutely nothing. Dynamite exploding in a mountainside that covers a gold mine or a diamond mine or a coal mine, that's a whole different thing. That dynamite has potential. It has the ability to do incredible things, but until it's put into play, in the right place, for the right purpose, with all the tools applied to it and action, it does nothing. It does nothing. Do you have potential in your life to do something grand, something incredible? You know, Sylvester Stallone, you may have seen this story. It's been floating around on social media for the last few days. Sylvester Stallone was turned down 3 different times to star in the movie that he wrote. They told him he didn't have what it took. Finally, he ended up taking a cut of 90% on the original offer for the screenplay that he wrote, because he was determined that not only did he want to sell the screenplay, he wanted to act in the movie. And they told him, no, you're not the right guy for this. They didn't see any potential in him. And again he was turned down. Finally, someone said, look, we'll give you 10% of what we think it's worth if you're determined to be in the movie. So he was. And Rocky has now grossed over $250 million. If he only gets a percentage of that, he's better off than what he could have sold it for and walked away. Because he saw his own potential. He knew what he was capable of. He had done the research. He understood the competitive field. He knew what his expertise was. Recently, Stephen Furtick said that he told a story of his own life, and he said, you know, there was a point where I was asked to help build a home. And the guy handed me his nail gun, and I destroyed it. I broke it. Not on purpose, but I broke his nail gun. And they said to me at that point, you just need to keep talking and leave the building to somebody else. And a few years later, he found himself with a microphone in his hand, gathered around as his team of people he had inspired, people that he had trained, people that he had talked to, people that he had influenced through his microphone, were building 7 houses on the same day. Now, most people would look at it and say, if you're going to build a house, it was much better to have a hammer or a nail gun than a microphone. But if you could build 7 houses simultaneously with the power of what you can do through the microphone, easier than you can with a nail gun, I think you found your potential. The question is, will you allow your potential to remain potential? Will you allow the fear of failure or the fear of success to stop you from doing what you were made to do? See, as leaders, we've got to be able not only to see our own potential, but to act on that potential. We've got to be able to do something about what we recognize in ourselves. We've got to be able to identify those talents and put them in play. Just having an incredible talent wouldn't do you any good. I have hundreds of books behind me. I could go pick up any one of them off the shelf. And just picking it up off the shelf, it doesn't do me any good. I can't just randomly grab, oh, let's see what's here. I bet this, look, there's a Maxwell mentoring book. I could just randomly grab this Maxwell mentoring book and slam it against my head. I could stick it in my pocket and carry it around for days. I could talk about this book for hours, and if I never open the book and pour into my mind, into my soul, into my heart, what's in the book, and you can see if you can see that, if the camera focuses on that, it's all marked up. I've been through this book a couple of times. But all of these books on the shelf, they have great potential. But there's no promise that they're going to impact my life. The potential is there, but there's no promise without action. Just because you have the books doesn't mean they're going to change your life. You've got to do something with the potential that rests in front of you. You've got to take action. You may have a great gift for gab. You may have a great understanding of mathematics. You may have a great knowledge or passion for medicine. Thomas Edison, inventor of the light bulb, had 10,000 attempts to make a light bulb. And they said, why didn't you give up after you failed all those times? He said, I didn't fail. I learned 10,000 other things I could make and 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb. That's all about attitude. But did he have from day one the potential to make a light bulb? Yes. But nothing promised. No one promised that because he had the potential, he would actually achieve it. It takes a lot of work to achieve, even with potential. It takes a lot of work to find the promise on the other side of the process. And sometimes the promise is intentionally held at bay. Sometimes the promise is waiting for us to go through the process, to have the patience, to be persistent. Keep doing the thing that you're doing that's moving you toward your promise, that's utilizing your potential. Keep doing it, even when everyone else says you're wasting your time. Keep doing it, even when you don't see the promise coming on the horizon. Keep doing it, even when you feel like everything you've invested was a waste of time. Because there will be a moment that you get to the edge of the cliff after climbing all the way up, after every rocky stumble, after every time your foot slipped on the rocks and you slammed your knee into the ground. And you feel the throbbing pain of the climb. You feel your muscles aching and burning. You feel the sweat dripping in your eyes. You feel the blood on your raw hands and knees. There will be a moment when you'll reach the summit and you can open your wings and fly. I love watching the videos on the helmet cam of the guys in the wingsuits. I mean, it's cool to watch them from the drone and you can see them and see them as they descend from the top of the mountain and down through the valleys. And you can actually see them in contrast to the scenery as they're flying by and how fast they're going. There are a couple of them where there's a guy who jumps off of a really high pinnacle, and as he's soaring down, he goes through what looks like the eye of a needle, giant rock with a hole in it. And as he flies through it, there's a film crew on the ground at the top of this mountain where the hole is. There's a film crew on either side, and there's a drone chasing him. And you see him fly down in his wingsuit and then collapse his arms and legs and turn sideways and fly through this needle. You could barely stand up and walk through it without being very precarious. And at 50 or 60 miles an hour flying through the air, he goes right through it. Now, that didn't happen by accident. He didn't get to the top of that pinnacle to gain that kind of speed on his first try. He didn't master aerodynamics on his first try. He didn't understand what it took for his body to fit through that little tiny hole. Aiming at that hole at 60 miles an hour, fighting the headwinds, the crosswinds, the temperature changes. He didn't do all that on the first try. He did that because of persistence, because his persistence paid off. He did that because although he had the potential from day one, from the first time he put on a winged suit, he had the potential to fly through that needle. But it took a lot of practice and a lot of perseverance and a lot of going through the process of failing in order to succeed again, and failing in order to succeed again, and failing without giving up in order to succeed again. How many do we know? How many people do you know personally that you could look at their life and go, I see potential in them, but they're not living up to it. I see potential in them, but they have a pattern of addictions. I see potential in them, but they have a pattern of violent outbursts. I see potential in them, but they have a pattern of laziness. I see potential in them, but they don't have the pattern to be persistent. They don't have the pattern to be patient. They don't have the patterns of going through the process. And for that reason, all the potential in the world, like all of the books on my shelf, have no ability to deliver the promise without the patience, the persistence, the practice, and the process. Now, I'm not sure where you're at in your leadership cycle. I don't know if you're leading 2 people or 20 people or 2,000 people or 200 people, but I will tell you this. It is your role as a leader to identify the potential in the people around you, to identify their potential, and to help push them in the way of their promise by helping them to see the place for patience, the time for persistence, to understand the process. That's your role as a leader in their life. Perhaps you are the one with great potential to be a great leader, but you don't have the patience with the people around you. You haven't been persistent in your pursuit of your potential. You haven't been persistent in your pursuit of your promise. It's one thing to have potential. There's no promise without your action. If you're not willing to do what has to be done, your potential, like an apple sitting on the shelf, will rot. There's a time and a place for a guy who can run a 4.5 40 or a 4.3 40 or a 4.0 40. A 40-yard dash is an impressive statistic. Whether you're in baseball or football or soccer, that kind of speed is impressive. It's potential. But just having that kind of speed doesn't make you a professional athlete. It means you got great potential. You're going to have to practice whatever sport it is you decide to apply that to. Maybe it's track and field. Maybe it's baseball, basketball, football, soccer. It doesn't matter. But without practice, you'll be a professional at none of those. And then understanding the difference between potential as a powerful athlete and purpose is significant. Michael Jordan not only has played basketball, he's also played baseball and golf. His name isn't in the record books for golf or baseball, but it is for basketball. Because his design, his purpose, his potential was maximized. We often overlook or ignore the fact that we have potential to do a lot of different things, and some of them are within our purpose, our calling, and it's what we're made for. It's all of our gifts and talents at their highest level put into play together, working together like a well-tuned machine. But you could take some of those gifts and talents, like raw speed, like natural agility, like great hand-eye coordination, and apply it to a plethora of opportunities. It doesn't mean they're all opportunities for you. And just because you have the potential of speed or athletic ability or agility or a great mind or an understanding of math and science or an understanding of languages and multiple languages, just because you have that potential, just because you have those gifts, just because you have those talents, doesn't mean the world is going to come beating a hole in your door, beating your door down to get you to do those things. You're going to have to polish them. You're going to have to practice them. You're going to have to be persistent in them. You're going to have to be patient in them. You're going to have to follow the process in them. All of the greatest gifts and talents in the world, all the greatest potential in the world will not make you a superstar. Potential doesn't do that. Potential, again, is like dynamite. Until it's applied in the right place, it doesn't matter. As a leader, finding that potential in your teammates, finding that potential in the person on your team is about recognizing the patterns of their successes. About recognizing, is this one someone who has great potential but a horrible attitude? They have great potential but they can't manage money. They have a great potential but they have addictions. They have great potential but they can't manage their anger and their rage. They have great potential but they're still living in the pains of the past. the mistakes that they made before, or the mistakes that someone else made regarding them. Because if they're living there, potential will be stifled. And if potential is stifled, there's no promise. Putting someone like that on your team may mean that your team now has great potential that comes with a whole lot of problems. Parenting problems, personal problems, professional problems. And those problems have potential to wreck your whole organization. Choosing someone on your team because of their potential can be a problem. You've got to be able to walk them through the process. As a leader, that's part of your role. As a leader, it's finding out, as Jim Collins said, not just who belongs on the bus, but what seat they belong in on the bus. Get them in the right position. Train them up. Lead them up to the next level. Give them the opportunity. Open the door for them. Create that leadership vacuum we talked about in previous lessons. Create that leadership vacuum by moving on yourself so that there's a need for this person with great potential to fill. So that purpose is in their way. So they can move from one stage to the next stage to the next stage, patiently, persistently following the process until their promise is revealed. The guy who wants to be a motivational speaker, who walks up to John Maxwell at an event, and John's told this story several times, I've reiterated it here several times. John says, someone will walk up to me after an event, and probably what's going on in their mind, and while none of us can really truly read minds, he said probably what's going on in their mind is they're looking at the size of the crowd. They know how much they paid for their ticket to get in the door. It's not real complicated math. And so they see the potential for a lot of income. And they'll come up to me after the event and they're like, wow, you're really good at what you do. I want to do what you do. And John said, for a long time, I felt like that was just a great compliment and I would just say, thank you. He said, but I began to realize that many of them only wanted the results that I was getting. They wanted the books. They wanted the sales. They wanted the income. They wanted the ticket sales. They wanted the cash flow. They wanted the freedom. They wanted everything that comes around being a successful public figure and a successful motivational speaker. That's what they really wanted. He said, so I began to turn the question on, and they would say to me, I want to do what you do. And John says, now I ask immediately, but are you willing to do what I did so I can do what I do? Are you willing to do what I did so that I can do what I do? It's not an easy journey to become one of the best in the world at anything. The best crochet artist, the best musical artist, the best rapper, the best chef on television, the best YouTube video maker, the best public speaker, the best author, the best football player, the best baseball, basketball, hockey player. To be the best in the world at anything requires discipline. It requires hard work. It requires decent study time. It requires a process. John says everybody I knew who became an overnight success, it took about 20 years for them to get there. 20 years of late nights, 20 years of study, 20 years of rehearsing and practicing and failing. 20 years of showing up when nobody else showed up. 20 years of doing that thing until the day came when you reached the pinnacle and it was time to jump off and open your wingsuit and fly. I don't know where you are on your climb right now. I don't know if you're sitting at the bottom of the mountain going, well, I wish somebody would give me a helicopter ride to the top so I can jump off and not be tired. I wish someone would just build an elevator next to this mountain so that I wouldn't have to climb at all. I don't know if maybe you're halfway up the mountain and you're thinking to yourself, why am I even doing this? See, this 20 years to an overnight success struck me the other day when I realized I've had the potential to be a motivational speaker, a public speaker, a leader, a trainer, probably since I was 7 or 8 years old. My mom tells stories of me standing out beside the house with all of my stuffed animals lined up beside the house, and I would talk to them for hours, teaching them, correcting them, scolding them. My stuffed animals were really out of line. They were an obnoxious bunch. No, that's probably not it. But the gift of gab, the ability to communicate, the ability to assemble my thoughts on the fly and articulate them clearly, whether they're deeply complex or Very, very basic. That's been a natural gift since I was in elementary school. It was only in middle school that I began to realize I could do something with that, and I joined the performing arts group, and I sang in the choir for years. Then when I got to high school, I joined the speech team, and I was a competitive speaker in high school. When I got out of high school, I went off to the Air Force, and I didn't use it much there. But when I got out of the Air Force, I went into sales and marketing. And I've spent 20 plus years now speaking and teaching and training in various aspects. But only in the last 7 years have I put all of my focus on what my potential is. Have I put all of my training, all of my books and all of my research into understanding what I'm made for, why I'm here, what I can do. What level of influence do I have the opportunity to exert? Whose life could I impact? And I'm guessing that's why you're here. Either that or because that little notification popped up and said, hey, he's talking again. But if there's potential in your life, and you're halfway up the mountain going, why am I still doing this? My knuckles are bloody, my hands are tired, my knees are hurting, my muscles are burning. Why am I still climbing? It's because you still have potential left. It's because you're learning to harness the power of that potential into a very polished craft. To do what only you can do on this earth that nobody else is capable of. Sure, there are other people who have the same potential. But how many Jerry Rices are there? How many Deion Sanders are there? How many Odell Beckhams are there? Not many. And it's one thing to be world class and play at that level. It's one thing to be at that level and stand out. How many guys played in the NFL that you don't even know their name? How many guys played in the NBA or the NHL or what is it, soccer? I can't remember. ASL? ALS? No, that's language, sign language. How many have played at the highest level and you don't even know their name? Oh, obviously, they had gifts, they had talents, they had ability, they had discipline and persistence and patience. And it paid off. It got them to the place in their life where they could make the money, where they could use their gifts at the highest level. But then there are those, even there, who really shine, who really stand out. Michael Jordan in his book said, I knew there would be a day that I would get on the basketball court and the guy on the other side, the guy that I'm guarding, the guy who's covering me, that guy would have the same skill set that I have. He would have the same natural abilities that I have. He would have the same vertical jump that I have. He would have the same ability to dunk the ball that I have. He would have the same ball handling skills, the same dribbling skills, the same agility with his feet, the same eye that I have. And matched person for person, talent for talent, gift for gift, ability for ability, potential for potential. My only hope of an edge is that I never stop practicing. He said, there may be a day when I step onto the court and I am outmatched for talent. I'm outmatched for agility. I'm outmatched for gifts. I'm outmatched in all of my potential. But I will never step on the court and be outpracticed. If you have potential in your life as a leader, if you have people on your team who have potential in their life as their leader, you've got to commit to exposing that potential, bringing it to the surface, highlighting it, and then acting on it. Perhaps your role as a leader is to find that person on your team who has great potential, but they're not living in it. And help them not only to see it, but open a door of opportunity for them to utilize it. Not only will it make you a better person as a leader, it might make your organization a better organization. Because once you take the potential that's in people on your team, take that potential and lay it out on the surface of what you're doing and allow them to be diligent. Allow them to practice, to be persistent. You may have to be the one who's being patient, because I can tell you, there's nothing harder to manage than a person who has great potential and no willpower. Or great potential, and that potential is like dynamite. Dynamite in storage is just a stick. Dynamite in application can open up a diamond mine or a gold mine or a new highway or level the ground to build a hospital or an orphanage. But dynamite in transit, especially in the old days when they used to have to put it in a wooden box and put it on a carriage that would shake as it went across the ground, and the horses would be pounding the dirt and the rocks would be beating against the metal and wooden wheels, and they had no shocks on them. And dynamite in that condition, when it gets hot, it sweats, and what it sweats is nitroglycerin, which is explosive. And so now you've got a stick that's sweating, and what was inert sitting in the storage facility is now potentially hazardous. It could blow up before you get it to the mountain. There are people that you're leading who have that same problem. Their potential may explode beyond your control. Their opportunities in life may explode before you can do anything about it, before you can contain it and harness the power. As a leader, you're responsible for identifying that potential and putting it in play. It may blow up and take your team to a whole new level, take your company to a whole new level. You may have a breakout salesperson who steps up and bam, out of nowhere, they deliver sales that your company can't keep up with. Been there, done that. They put you in a place where you've got more work to do than your team knows how to do. More customers than you know how to service. Controlling people is a really bad thing, but directing power, directing potential, directing the blast is the work of an engineer. It's the work of a good, strong leader. You ever seen the demolition men who are professionals bring down a building? How it all collapses to the inside and there's very little dust and there's very little damage around them and there's very little destruction around them because they know exactly where to place the charges, where to cause the explosion, where to direct the heat, where to direct the dust, so that everything falls into a contained space. You can watch those videos on YouTube. You can also see the ones that go wrong, and they not only bring down the building, but the one next to them. Or like the genius who cuts down the big tree and he tries to pull on it with his truck, and then realizes that the weight of the tree falling down the hill the other way is heavier than his truck, and destroys his brand new Dodge truck. His truck had a lot of potential. The tree had more. Being able to direct that force, direct that potential of your teammates, of your best salespeople, of your best engineers, of your best directors, being able to direct that is the job of you as the leader. Understanding, too, that sometimes the best way to direct that potential is to give them the license to be free and take their potential someplace else, maybe out on their own. And if you can't let them take credit for their own successes, if you demand that credit as a leader stay within your organization, you're robbing them of an opportunity. You're robbing them of a promised future. You're robbing them of living to their full potential. And as a good leader of people, not just an organization, you've got to be willing to step back and go, you may be too big for our house. You may be the Clydesdale among Shetland ponies. And when you were young, it was cute for you to ride around in circles with the child on your back. Our Shetland ponies are really good for that. But you're a Clydesdale. You need to be going and pulling Budweiser carts or something. Your potential is too big for here. And I appreciate you, and I want you to be here, but I don't want to stop you from your own success. See, a good leader is able to do that. A good leader is able to move the spotlight and go, look at that one. Are you that kind of leader? Now, you may be watching this program from Nigeria. And I know there are some John Maxwell coaches who watch this program in Nigeria. I know there are some young leaders who watch this program in Nigeria. I know, in fact, that about 30% of the audience that watch on Facebook Live, and this is without regard to the podcast or the YouTube subscribers or those who watch on the website, those who watch on Facebook Live, about 30% of those people are not even on the North American continent. They're scattered around the world. They're in Nigeria, they're in Papua New Guinea, they're in Guyana, they're in Ghana, they're in Kenya, they're in the Congo, they're in Brazil, and they watch this program on a regular basis. If you're in Nigeria, there's an event coming up very soon, and I will share a tag in this particular post that it has the address. The young man by the name of Nelson Amadigwe is actually hosting an event called Generation Next Leadership. Now, this is their 1-year anniversary. They just had their 1-year anniversary. I believe it was Saturday. It's a young organization. These are young people, all of them in their 20s, from what I understand, who have committed their lives to good leadership. They've committed their lives to impacting the lives of young people their age. And I'm doing everything I can to support them from here, providing training videos for them, providing content for them. So there is a lesson that will be taught at this major event, at the Generation Next Leadership event that's coming up. At that event, there is a lesson that I've taught that has been heard nowhere else. No one has ever heard this lesson. It's already been provided. It's already been edited. It's already been sent to Nelson. It will be aired as a part of this leadership training event. And the comments below, you'll have the link in the comments below to the event for you to register. Nelson, I know you're watching. Send me exactly what they need, where their registration link is, so they can actually register. And if there's an opportunity for them to attend online or to purchase the content later, let me know how to put that out there as well, and I'll share that as well. I'm proud of what you're doing. I'm proud of you, Nelson, as a leader, to do what you're called to do. I know you're working on your MBA as well. I know you're digging into school, and you're doing everything that you can at your young age. And I'm proud of you for doing that, for putting in the effort and doing that work. But I also know that there are a lot of people whose lives have a chance to be impacted. There's a lot of potential in this event. And I want to see others come to this event and participate. Chris, I know you're doing a great deal of work along with the John Maxwell team and with Nelson to put on this event. And I'm proud of you for that. I'm glad you guys are seeing your generation and seeing your nation as worth your attention and your help. So if you're watching this video all the way to the end, I want you to look down in the comments. Obviously, it's going to take me a few minutes to get that from Nelson and get it on there, so it's not there right now, but it will be very, very soon. Come back and look in the comments and find the link to register to Generation Next Leadership event that's coming up in Port Harcourt in Nigeria. If you're not there, get there. Find your way there. If you're not registered, click on the button and get registered. I am J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Please like and subscribe on Facebook, on YouTube, on the podcast, and share these videos. And if you have the chance to go to jlorennorris.com and share that as well, my potential is in doing this same kind of communication from the platform in training environments for corporate organizations. I'll be in Washington, D.C. training leaders from the Congo who are coming to D.C. just prior to their own national elections so that we can train them on attitude and governmental process. So I enjoy that kind of thing. And if you can share my website and the potential to reach out to other people and share the same type of insights and knowledge, I would appreciate that help. Until then, until tomorrow at 6:20 a.m., have a blessed day.